When I was growing up, my parents didn't have a whole lot of money, so things were always tight, especially when it came time to buy school clothes. While I would always look forward to going back to school, it was also a point of dread for me, because I knew that I wasn't going to fit in the in crowd just based solely on my clothes. I knew that shouldn't have been the most important thing that I was worried about in school, but the harsh reality is all kids want to fit in. I think that wearing school uniforms may have actually mitigated that, because everybody would have had to wear the same thing. Today I want to discuss the social benefits to school uniforms, the financial benefits to requiring school uniforms, and then I'd also like to bring up a couple of arguments I've heard against school uniforms, and then my counter arguments to those. First, let's go over the social benefits to school uniforms. Pardon me. Just like most social situations, kids judge other kids based on appearance and dress. If they're not wearing the latest trends, they may not accept them as readily. If everybody was wearing the school uniforms, then kids would join groups based more on mutual interest than what clothes they're wearing. Also, schools will be able to better enforce dress code policies if everybody was wearing a uniform, because you have a certain way of wearing the uniform, so it takes away all the ambiguity. You wear it this way. If you're not, then you're wrong. Now I'd like to discuss some of the financial benefits to school uniforms. Some parents feel they need to buy their kids the latest fashions because either one, they don't know how to tell them no, or two, they really want them to fit in. Requiring school uniforms would take away that burden from parents. And so, of course, they would be able to spend money on school uniforms instead of all the latest fashions, which will save them a lot of money. Of course, they could spend a little bit more money and buy the better quality uniforms, but in the end, it's much cheaper to maintain some uniforms than whole wardrobes. Because kids would only need a couple of uniforms that they could wear throughout the week, or even if they had one for each day of the week, it's still going to be cheaper than having to buy all their clothes at the mall at all the popular stores. There have been many arguments against school uniforms, but I'd like to discuss two of them here, and then my counter arguments to those. Some kids and even their parents think that school uniforms would, the kids would lose their identity, or they get lost in the crowd, or even lose their sense of creativity because of they must, all be alike. Most European schools require school uniforms, and there are a ton of actors and musicians and artists and everything that comes out of those bastions of conformity that I think just kind of counters that argument all by itself. One of the other arguments that I've heard is cost, in that they can still be expensive for some parents just because they don't even have the money to buy the clothes, so school uniforms would actually cost more money. Well, this is something that can actually be mitigated pretty easily by either a stipend or a subsidy rather, from the school districts, or even the school districts issuing the uniforms directly to the kids. While I'm not a big fan of social programs, I think this would actually be a very beneficial program for all of the students. You've heard my arguments for school uniforms and a couple against, and my counter arguments to those. While I don't think that requiring school uniforms will solve all of the kids' problems, I think as more school districts adopt school uniforms, there should be a reduction in anxiety and probably a little bit more acceptance of other kids. Plus, the school dress code would be more easily enforced. The cost for the parents would be cheaper because they don't have to maintain such huge wardrobes. Even though some kids will still want the clothes for after school, you won't have to maintain as many, and they won't wear out as fast. But for those who can't afford it, there can be programs in place to help mitigate that cost. Students can still explore their individuality. There's still plenty of classes for art, drama, those kind of things. So I don't think that that's really a valid argument for not requiring school uniforms. I hope that you now have a better understanding of why I believe that school uniforms should be required in all public schools.